What will happen to the stock market?
What should I do with my stimulus check?
Will the economy recover?
Hey everyone, it's Sally Krawcheck, CEO and co-founder of Ellevest, the investing platform built by women for women. And today I'm going to answer some of your most commonly Googled questions about the stock market and the economy.
Who gets stimulus money?
Well, I hope you do. You can receive up to $1,200 plus $500 for each dependent child. And you'll receive a stimulus check if you have a Social Security number and you file taxes in 2018 or 2019. And if you don't earn enough to file taxes, you can get it if you receive Social Security payments. Now, you get a payment. It's on a sliding scale. It's a little complicated because it's the government. But you receive a payment if you earn less than $99,000 if you're a single filer. If you earn less than $136,500 for head of household, or less than $198,000 for married filers in your most recent tax return.
What should I do with my stimulus check?
Well, in theory, you should do whatever you want with it. The government sent that money out with no strings attached so that you could spend it, so that they could stimulate the economy. That's why it's called stimulus money. Now, what do I hope that you will do with it? I hope that if you have credit card debt outstanding or other high interest rate debt, that you'll take this money and pay some portion of that off. It's high interest rate, it tends to sap your wealth, it's very expensive. I also hope if you don't have savings, what we call an emergency fund, that's the equivalent of several months of take-home pay, that then you'll put this into savings and have that there as a cushion for yourself. I also hope you'll put it in your 401k and invest for future you or invest for a future goal. But it really is in order to stimulate the economy. And so I know the government and small businesses will be perfectly happy if you go out and spend it.
What will happen to the stock market?
Bottom line, in the short to medium term, nobody knows. I don't care how confident they sound. I don't care how often they tell you how right they have been historically. Nobody can predictably forecast the performance of the stock market or individual stocks over the short to medium term. There are just too many factors that drive it. One of which, very importantly, is that stock prices aren't reflective of just what's happened in the past, which is pretty easily analyzable. They also are reflections of what expectations are for the future. And so the expectations of the future can change on any given day. They can be wrong, they can be right, and that's what makes stock prices move. Now, what I can tell you is that over the long term since the 1920s, the stock market has gone up about 9.7% a year. That's quite attractive. And that is despite World War II, the Great Depression, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, stagflation, inflation, oil crisis, the Great Recession, the internet bubble burst, that even with these tough things that have happened to our economy, the economy is such that it continues to grow over periods of time, and the stock market continues to reflect that even during tough times. It's been upward trending with volatility around that trend.
Why is gas so cheap?
Prices are set by supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand for something, people really want something, but there's not a lot of supply, there's not a lot of it, prices go up. If instead there's not much demand, say people aren't in their cars, they're sheltering in place, they're not traveling, they're not going many places, and there's a lot of supply, then prices go down. That's why gas prices are low right now.
Is it a good idea to buy a house right now?
Okay, if you're asking because you think house prices are a little soft and you can buy one and potentially flip it and make money, please don't. If you are looking for a home for you to live in and for your family to live in, it could be a good time to buy right now if you're in good shape financially. Have you paid off your high interest rate debt, your credit card debt, for example? Have you built an emergency fund that's some months of take-home pay as a safety net? Is the company you're working for in pretty good financial shape? Are they getting through this downturn well? If you can answer yes to all of that, then if you can afford a down payment for the home that you love, that's 20% of the home's value, so you don't have to take a big mortgage relative to it, then this could be a good time to buy a home.
Is it a good idea to buy stocks now?
Historically, it's almost always a good idea to buy stocks right now if you can invest in those stocks and leave that money there for the long term, say 15 years. If you had invested on any day since the 1920s and left the money in the stock market, broad-based, diversified portfolio of the stock market for 15 years, your chances, even with all the ups and downs, of a positive return were 99%.
Will the housing market crash?
I'm not going to lie, it could. I'm not saying it will, but of course it's a possibility as people earn less, potentially can't pay their mortgage, potentially have to sell at fire sale prices, and have to do it at the same time a lot of other people perhaps have lost their jobs and aren't feeling confident about buying. Now, it is instructive to look at the last housing market crash. It was driven by over-leverage, which were people buying big homes with big mortgages. And when the prices of homes started to soften, the house value goes down, but the mortgage doesn't. And so these individuals ended up underwater pretty quickly, therefore tried to panic sell, couldn't find a market for it. This downturn is driven by a virus, not over leverage in the mortgage markets, people having big mortgages. And so what's really going to matter here is the depth and the length of the recession and how quickly we recover.
Should I invest in oil stocks now?
The answers are it depends and yes. If you're thinking about it as a short-term play, a short-term bet, then sure, we talked earlier about how no one can forecast accurately where the market or sector is going over the short or medium term. So take the money you would have taken to the trip to Vegas that got canceled and go ahead and make that bet on oil stocks if you want. The other answer is yes. If you're thinking about investing in oil stocks as part of a long-term diversified investment portfolio, stocks, bonds, a range of different industries, then the answer to my mind is always yes.
What happens in a recession?
A recession is defined as 6 months or more of economic contraction or negative economic growth. It can last for 6 months or can last for years. In a recession, companies tend to sell less. They thus can lose money. They thus cut back on spending. People lose their jobs. House prices can go down. The stock market can go down.
Who will be affected by a recession?
The answer is everyone can be, though of course to different extents. And you can see how these things can sort of become self-reinforcing spirals, where if businesses are selling less and then they're firing people or reducing pay, and then the consumer doesn't feel as good, so doesn't buy as much, so the company sells less, so reduces pay, so the consumer doesn't feel as good. And so the effect of a recession can be self-reinforcing. And that's why you often hear, as you are in this downturn, about economic stimulus, where the government steps in with tax cuts or interest rate decreases in order to put more money in the consumer's pocket, in order to and in this case, businesses' pockets, in order to encourage them, the consumer, to spend more and the business to keep people employed.
Will the economy recover?
The economy has recovered from every economic recession and economic depression, 100% of them. And we can criticize capitalism for any number of things, but its ability to drive growth, to drive recovery, is second to none.
Should I pay my rent?
The answer is if you can afford to, absolutely. If you can't afford to, call your landlord and see what the two of you can work out. After you hang up with him or her, call the utility company, call the electricity company, call the cable company, call the cell phone company, call your student loan provider, call the credit card company, call. Spend that time calling. You never know. The answer may be no, but by spending the time, more and more of these companies recognizing the shape the economy's in, the shape that consumers in, are really working with consumers today in order to work out different payment plans or defer payments. I hope that answers your questions, maybe your concerns about the stock market and about the economy. I'd invite you to come over to Ellevest.com, both to learn more about Ellevest, as well as go to our magazine page where we've got a ton of information about all things money. And particularly as we're going through this downturn, a lot of information to work to help you navigate it. If I didn't answer your question and you don't see it there, email us at questions@Ellevest.com. We are committed to answering every money question that our broader community has for us as we all navigate through this time.